meeting of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission on February 14th, 2023 to order. Start with our bills and communications. We have two meetings, our January 24th and the special executive session. To the extent needed, no votes were taken at that session, no actions was taken.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, there's two sets of minutes that are linked on here. There's actually a third.
Oh, is that the third that we have here?
It's kind of floating around, very similar to the other one, but it's not.
So we have the
I apologize for not.
No, it's okay. We have the January 24th, January 25th, and February 1st minutes. The February 1st I'm holding in my hand. That was the executive session where no votes were taken, no action was taken. May I have a motion on the items unless there needs to be split out?
Move to approve.
All minutes?
We
All
can.
minutes.
I found no error in them.
Any second? May I have a second? Second, Commissioner Brayman. No errors, from Commissioner Francis. Anything else? Commissioner Brayman?
No, it looks to be in order.
Okay. Anything else from the commission about this, top of the 3 minutes? Any issues? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. See 7 hands, so passes unanimously. Next item is our closed executive session, discussion of litigation of 4185 Black Rock Turnpike. May I have a motion to go into executive session? Commissioner Braun, seconded by Commissioner Harrison. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. See 7 hands, so we will.
We're going to adjourn to the next door classroom.
We're back on the record. We've ended our closed executive session. No votes were taken, no action was taken. We just ask for the motion, or may I have a motion on one of the items we discussed in the executive session?
Talking, on the item B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Commissioner Levy?
Yes, in connection with the, litigation at 4185 Black Rock Turnpike, there's a pending case in the matter of Ronan versus Plan and Zoning Commission, which also includes defendant Fairfield Medical LLC. My motion is to accept the terms and conditions of the stipulated judgment, between the parties, and defendant Fairfield Medical's revocation and voiding of the 830G site plan approval as provided by section 14-7B of the Connecticut Rules of Court and applicable law.
Okay. May I have a second? Commissioner Harrison. Anything to discuss? We've been presented with the stipulation.
Yeah.
We discussed it with counsel. I'm in favor of it.
Right.
I think it's a pretty easy win for us to vacate the 830G and allow this settlement to move forward. Any other comments?
No.
Commissioner Brayman?
Just that the medical use is appropriate for this site.
And was previously approved.
Yes. And I think most people would prefer that over the 830G application, so. Okay. Can we move to a vote? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. 7 hands, passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Moving on to new applications, recommendation to public hearing, zoning regulation amendment, application of Post Road Residential Inc. to amend section 13.14, a transit-oriented development park. Mr. Wendt.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you will recall, I hope, that back in November, this commission had a pre-application meeting with prospective purchasers of property at 81 Black Rock Turnpike. They presented a conceptual plan that contemplates some zoning regulation amendments. They have submitted an application for those zoning regulation amendments with the concept plan. As a regulation amendment, it does require a public hearing.
May I have a motion? Commissioner Ford, move to approve, second by Commissioner Levy. Anything that?
Nothing, I mean, it requires a public hearing.
Yeah, this is one by Planet Fitness.
It is. We have we'll get you, the materials are now posted on our website as of today. But the
I
same
assume-
conceptual plan, similar to what you saw, but it's their package of amendments. They want to have discussion on that before they take the next step in doing the full engineering of the
Okay.
site.
That's fair. Any other comments? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. See 7 hands, passes unanimously. Old business, zoning regulation amendment, application of Town Plan and Zoning Commission to amend section 2.4 of the zoning regulations to extend the existing prohibition of cannabis establishments for an additional year. Mr. Went?
Yeah, I don't have much on this, Mr. Chairman. As we discussed at the last meeting, our existing prohibition of all cannabis establishments expires at the end of this month. This was a proposal to extend that for an additional year. Beyond that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer it. I don't have anything beyond that.
May I have a motion? Commissioner Bramman.
Move to approve the, regulation amendment to extend the moratorium 1 additional year.
Second, Commissioner Braun. Commissioner Bramman.
I was in favor of the initial 1-year moratorium because I believe that we needed, more time as a community to assess, the state's options that they've given us for either approving, the use of, cannabis within our zoning regulations or rejecting it, outright entirely forever. And, obviously certain communities have chosen to do one or the other. But retail cannabis is still in its infancy. It's just very recently, been licensed, to go forward in some communities in the state. And I think we could benefit from having, the knowledge of their, experience before we make a decision one way or the other.
Commissioner Braun.
Yes, I agree with, everything Commissioner Brown said. Also, we got some interesting feedback from one member of the public that there are benefits to allowing cannabis, sales in town, but we just don't have the information yet, and I would really like to have some time to see how it's working in other towns that have approved it. I think there's 7 or 8 towns that have. So I would support extending the moratorium for another year for that purpose.
Any other members of the commission? Commissioner Harrison?
Yeah, thank you. I concur largely what Commissioner Brahman said, but I would like to explore, if we could create our own regulations on this instead of just going, if, let's just say we do go by this, postpone it for a year, that we say this is okay, that we adopt the states, why can't we just create our own, something that fits into Fairfield?
Well, any regulation you choose to do is gonna be our own regulation.
Right.
The state has given us the option of either choosing to permit it or to prohibit it. So thus far, the commission has chosen, not to permit it. If there's consensus of the commission that you wanna pursue cannabis uses as a permitted use, we could certainly do that. And it would be of our own accord. I mean, the state has defined what those uses are. The commission would have to choose which of those uses you want to consider permitted uses under what constraints you may wish them to be permitted.
So I don't know if this is how it passed in the bill, but I remember reading early on that I think in some towns that have the population over 50,000, there has to be like a cannabis area, a designated area where people can actually.
That's a different aspect of whether or not you're going to permit retail sales or production or distribution of cannabis. That prohibition has to do with whether or not you ban use of cannabis in the public. Right now, as I understand it, it's legal in the state of Connecticut to possess it and to consume it. And where it's legal to smoke cigarettes, it is now legal to smoke cannabis. Where you can't smoke cannabis where it's illegal to smoke cigarettes. If you choose to say you can't smoke it anywhere in town in a public place, then you need to establish a location where that's permitted.
Okay, I understand.
But if you're not banning it across the board, you don't need to do that. But again, that's beyond the scope of this commission's jurisdiction. The question is, does this commission support a retail cannabis shop or not?
Okay.
Right now, the answer to that question has been no for now.
Mm-hmm.
Should you choose to go down that road, yeah, and you would determine, it would be this commission's choice as to what zones it would be permitted in under what circumstances. So yes, it would be our own regulation. The state hasn't said, if you approve it, this is what you have to do.
Okay.
It's you either choose to permit it or not permit it.
Okay.
Some towns some towns that have opted to permit it are treating it similarly to like an alcohol permit, that they're requiring a certain offset from other uses like schools or similar type uses. The state has capped how many licenses can be issued based on population, but the more fundamental question is whether or not you want to permit it in the first place. If the answer to that is yes, then yes, this commission would define the terms under which you would do that.
Thank you.
Any other members of the commission? I also support the extension, for all the reasons that have been stated. I mean, even just simply, I'd like to know in the next year what surrounding communities will allow it and where it will be available. I find that to be a very, at least material piece of knowledge for myself. We put this to a vote? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. See 7 hands, so it passes unanimously. Coastal site plan, 40 Gould Avenue, coastal site plan application of RTB Fairfield LLC pertaining to the construction of a family dwelling.
I'm going to yield the floor, Mr. Chairman, to my distinguished colleague at the podium.
Ms. Harrigan.
I think I should be loud enough from here. You think I need the mic?
No.
Okay,
As long as they're being, I can hear you, and
I can hear it here too.
as long as you can hear it there, then you're fine.
I don't know.
No, that's,
Okay.
you're good.
So 40 Gould Avenue is a coastal site plan application. As you can see on the aerial, it backs up to, tidal marshland. And on the survey itself, there is an area of flag tidal marshland at the very corner of the site, as well as some areas that are, below elevation 4.7, which is the 1-year tidal line. This is a pre-existing rear lot, and, once you exclude all of the area that is, dedicated to the access way, as well as the flagged wetlands, as well as the area below the 1-year tidal line, and the area that we don't permit because it, is too narrow in the rear, it does have enough lot area in order to allow a duplex on this parcel. Based on the, I'm just gonna skip to the survey. So based on the survey, they are, some soil erosion and protection in the back of the property, adjacent to the 1-year tidal line, which should protect the site during construction, and the adjacent coastal resources. We did actually send this out to the state DEP, for the coastal planners' comments, and unfortunately, we didn't receive those until, Friday, but what they indicated was, I think a similar concern that they've had in terms of increasing the density for the site, due to future sea level rise. We are certainly comfortable with, allowing this to be converted to a duplex. They did have concerns about wanting to ensure that even below the, 1-year tidal line, that they leave that area alone. So I think where the planting plan had predominantly had some of the plantings in between the flagged wetlands and the 1-year tidal line, it is the state DEP's recommendation that all planting be outside of that 1-year tidal line. And as staff, we're certainly, fine with that recommendation. In terms of the site, this has existing sewer, water, and all utilities, so we don't have a concern with any expansion of those utilities into this area. We do ask that, similar to prior projects, you add, should you choose to approve this project, that you add those, newly revised comments by the DEP, that all the planting be outside of that 1-year title line. And that no additional future flood protection controls be proposed, such as seawalls or revetments, should this site be subject to future sea level rise. We would also ask that the architectural plan, be consistent with the flood protection regulations, and that all soil erosion and sedimentation, be installed and maintained during the entirety of the construction project at the site. And the engineering department has preliminary looked at the drainage plan, and they were fine with the drainage plan, but expect to get additional information, as is customary with a single-family or a duplex project, prior to them issuing the permit. And so, they didn't have any additional comments for us at this time. And that's all I have.
May I have a motion? Commissioner Braun?
I would like to make a motion to table this until we get the engineering report and we get conservation to look at it from a natural resource coastal perspective, not from an inland wetlands perspective, and until we get the DEP report. Because, it's kind of hard to read the plans here, but it looks like, it's being built right up against that tidal line. Can you maybe,
Let's get a motion on
Oh,
first,
yeah, okay.
and then.
That's my motion.
No, that's fine,
We'll
we'll
get more
just,
information, sorry.
we'll get that.
I have a lot of questions, that's all.
Second, Commissioner
I'm
Braman?
gonna second the motion to table.
Okay. So let's,
Yeah, I would like to read the DEP report and,
which is fine. I mean, let's be, one thing I would like to say, I mean, I think last time we've had motions to table and we've asked substantive questions,
okay.
which I'm not sure how, in reviewing that since we last did it, not sure how really appropriate that really is. So if there's questions, we may want to move to a motion to approve or something along those lines. If you have a motion to table, you know, and asking for additional information and the reasons for tabling, I think that's fair. I'm not sure we should be going too much into substantive stuff and questions, though, if the motion is to table only, though. And we've done that in the past, but I've been reviewing it since then, I'm not sure how proper that really is.
So tabling?
Of
Yeah.
kind of talking outside of what the motion is. I mean, we have a motion to table, so, but then asking.
Do we have discussion on the motion now, or no?
We can, but if you're gonna be asking questions substantively, I'm not
Okay.
sure that that's my point. So if you want it to table to get the additional information that you requested, that's fine.
Okay.
I do have one issue with it, but I'll discuss that in a second. But that's what I want, you know.
So my motion to table is, I would like to be fully informed. I would like to hear from engineering, I would like to hear from conservation, I would like to have a chance to look at this. The last letter we got had slightly different information in it. It mentioned very specifically that sea level is expected to rise by 20 inches over the next, 27 years, I think they said. So I would like to have some time to review that before we, make a decision on this.
Okay. Commissioner Braman? Then I have some comments. Commissioner Braman?
I seconded the motion for discussion purposes and also because I wanted to have a chance to review the, DEP, letter, which I now have reviewed. And, it's, the DEP letter is similar to, letters that we've gotten on other, subdivisions or, residential, developments that are similarly, you know, as of right, in this zone. I'm ready to vote tonight on the substance of the application.
So I don't mind, tabling for, to get the additional information. We often do that. I don't think there's any prejudice, with it being in this, where are we, early February for next year, till the 28th. My only concern is, I'm not sure, we've asked the Conservation Department in the past for something like this, and they were very kind and courteous and to give us a response that is outside of their jurisdiction. I think this is also something that's outside their jurisdiction, and while I have no doubt that anything they provide us will be valuable. I am hesitant to, again, put more work on them that is outside their jurisdiction, especially when we have the DEP and our own staff and our engineering opining on this. Commissioner Braun?
Okay, so from my perspective, DEP does not come down and look at the site. Conservation, they walk the land of our whole town. They know our properties. It is outside their wetlands jurisdiction, assuming it's, I mean, I haven't seen anything that says that, but I assume there's no inland wetlands or inland wetland regulated area on the site. But they have much more that they do than simply inland wetlands. Conservation Commission is responsible for protecting and preserving all the natural resources of our town. They are in charge of our marsh restoration program. They're in charge of shellfish. There's a Shellfish Commission, but the Conservation Department supports that. They give advice and counsel to the DEP. They give advice and counsel to us, and they can, and they should. So just like we seek advice and counsel from police, fire, engineering, I believe we should from conservation in every instance where it could impact the coastal resource. Even though it's not, they don't issue permits, they still have knowledge, and that's in their area of expertise. So I would like to hear from them about whether they feel these are adequate or appropriate. Maybe there should be more protections.
May I clarify, please?
Commissioner, sorry, Ms. Harrigan, please.
So for the last application where this was requested, it backed up to a town-owned property.
Mm-hmm.
This does not. This is private property. So if you look at this aerial, this is private property in this whole entire Rio Tidal Marshland area. So the town of Fairfield has no jurisdiction over this area, differently than I think the other parcel where it did back up to town property, where the town was maintaining that. When it's private property, the town really doesn't have immediate access to those areas, and they're not maintaining them without authorization from the property owners. The other thing that's a little bit different for this parcel as opposed to some of our prior applications is that this was not in a designated natural diversity database area where we had to contact DEP Wildlife. Those maps are updated every 6 months by the Wildlife Division, who are biologists, botanists, and they're looking for those areas where there might be threatened either plant or animal species throughout the state of Connecticut. And so this was not part of that area, so we didn't send this to that division of the DEP.
Okay.
Go ahead, Commissioner Braun.
So I hear all that and I understand all of that, but the fact that it's private versus town-owned property, to me, doesn't mean they shouldn't weigh in on the natural resources, just the way we do, okay? And I think they don't give permits, but they can weigh in on it. And the natural diversity database, my understanding how they get information is when people provide it. I don't think they come down here and look around. I think neighbors have to say, I saw an owl or something. I don't think the DEP comes down here every few months and says, is there something here? So that's a side issue because the DEP has relinquished any control over this parcel. They apparently, it's not in their database, no one reported it to them. That doesn't mean there's not something there that's worthy of being protected. But my concern is the tidal wetlands are very close. The tidal line is very close to where this development is. And our experts in our conservation department, I would like them to look at it and see if they think this is adequate. They're the experts. They're the ones that are.
Well, I understand that, but, and I'm not suggesting that they couldn't do that, but what I'm suggesting is, and rightfully so, it's outside of their jurisdiction. And
Wetlands jurisdiction.
it's outside of, yes, but but you're asking for their expert opinion within their place in the Inland Wetlands Department and Commission. It's outside their jurisdiction. I mean, we can certainly ask of them, but I don't want this to become a habit that we're asking them for outside their jurisdiction, because there may be times when, like that last property, where it backs up to town-owned property, that we really would like them to get involved and help us with something. Here, we literally have all private properties, and this is, again, it's outside their jurisdiction. We can ask them to see what their response is, but I think it'd be very fair for them to say, listen, it's outside of our jurisdiction. We don't want to opine on this because, quite simply, it's outside their jurisdiction.
When we say outside their jurisdiction, do we mean their inland wetlands jurisdiction?
Yeah, I can, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wayne.
I think as Emmeline described the last time, the concern was that it did abut, tidal marsh that the town does maintain through their tidal marsh restoration program, and rightly so. I think there's a distinction to be made here when it's abutting town land that's managed by the Conservation Commission and Department outside of their inland wetland jurisdiction, but in their marsh restoration and other roles. But in this case, since it is bordered by private property, they don't have the dominion there. So I would be reluctant to even make the request. I mean, I'm confident of the reply. The reply will be, we don't have any regulatory jurisdiction here, as they did before, but then they went on, because it was adjacent to town open space, the opinion was they didn't see any adverse impact. So as it abuts, so sites that abut town-owned resources, I would agree with you that would be a valid referral to make, but in a case where the town doesn't own any adjacent property, have no dominion over that space, then I would respectfully suggest that wouldn't be, I think that would be an overreach. As it relates to the last time, you're correct that this response is, doesn't get into the sea level rise piece as the response that we got from South Pine Creek, but we are nevertheless, I think, recommending that we follow the same conditions of approval that were established for that permit with respect to no structural intervention should there be sea level rise here. So I think we're kind of taking what they advised us on the South Pine Creek and applying it to this site. But in my opinion, I think since there isn't any adjacency to town property that the Conservation Department has any dominion over, it would be, I think, beyond the scope of their review. And that's what.
And again, just to be clear, I'm only asking further expertise. I'm not asking for permitting or regulatory. They're the experts. They're the ones that protect our natural resources townwide. So that they don't have regulatory authority, so they have expertise, and that's their background. That's what they do. This is, I know, basically one house over from the Welch Terrace marsh area. Mm-hmm. So it could have an impact on it. So I'm looking at an aerial on my phone, which shows it's extremely close to what's called the Welch Terrace Marsh Open Space Area. So it's not in it. I would just like, from their position as experts, to have them say, yeah, we think it's good. And I think they should be doing that in everything with a CAM, any coastal area. That's what I would like to ask this commission to do, but it's not up to me, so.
Any other members of the commission? Commissioner Ford.
Two things. One is, I think you can't compel a private property owner to permit a government agency to come in and inspect their property without a warrant or other legal reason to do so. So even if we wanted them to have to do that, the only way they could do it is by consent. And I would suspect that the homeowners wouldn't give their consent because it could lead to issues for their application. Number one. Number two is, I don't think there's a second. I think Commissioner Raymond withdrew it.
I was a second for discussion purposes, and the discussion has been had, so.
Yeah, so.
I'm still a second, but I think, I'm ready to vote on the motion to table.
Commissioner Francis.
They have tidal wetlands, but conservation does not have jurisdiction over tidal wetlands. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
Only inland wetlands. Okay.
Commissioner Harrison.
This is just a hypothetical, just a question. May I ask a question to Commissioner
Go ahead.
Brown for you? If the conservation director did look at this property and said, this isn't good, then what would happen? Like, what do you?
Well, we would take that into consideration the same way we do it if the police department captain writes an email saying, I don't think we should move the cars around and therefore we want a sight line. They don't have regulatory authority over what we do either, but we would just seek their expertise and we can rely on that to be fully informed. I just want their expertise.
No, but you keep referring to the police and fire. I mean, they're within their regulatory authority with respect to the streets, so the fire and all that stuff, which we take into consideration when it comes into buildings, traffic and all the like. I mean, here, again, I'm not suggesting they can't do it. They certainly have the expertise for it, but they are not within their jurisdiction. And I think there may come a time when we do want them to opine on something, And I think in cases like this, where they clearly don't have jurisdiction, doesn't abut, I don't wanna burden them with additional work, when they have other tasks to be had, just simply to be asking for their opinion that's outside of the jurisdiction of their department. So, that's where I am on it, but I'm okay with getting a few, an extra 2 weeks if you think for the extra, information. Well, I'm not, just as a courtesy generally and, to get additional information, though, I'm not sure, how much more material will it be, but I'm okay with that at the very least. But again, even if we make the request of the inland wetlands, I suspect that their response of it's outside of our jurisdiction is what we're gonna get, and I think we should be satisfied with that. Any other member of the commission? Motion is the table. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. All against? Against?
Against the table.
Against table, yeah, Kathy's hand was still up, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Well, right now, you voted for the tabling, right?
Yeah, I hope so.
I hope you did so. All those against, please raise your hand. Okay, four, and an abstention?
Pardon me?
Anybody abstain? Commissioner Harrison, did you vote?
No, I was just scratching my head.
No.
I voted for the tabling.
You voted for tabling, okay, so it's 3-4 tabling, 4 against tabling.
Thank you.
Okay, so the motion to table, does not pass. May I have another motion? Commissioner,
Move to approve with the conditions stated by staff, including the condition, recommended by DEP that, there be no, plantings within the 1-year title line.
okay. Ms. Harrigan, is that sufficient for you?
And no further.
Okay,
And no further construction, and the conditions stated by staff in the report that there be no further construction in the event of,
Yeah.
sea level rise.
Yeah, there were those four conditions that were.
yeah, that's fine. Ms. Harrigan said we're good, so. Is there a second? Commissioner Ford? Commissioner Brayman, then.
I reviewed the plans, and I reviewed the letter from DEP, and, I reviewed the, thoughtful report from staff and, also the report from the applicant's, scientist, and I'm convinced that, on the merits, while it's, obviously a risk, to do any, increase in density in a, flood-prone area like this, as DEP points out, this is something that's allowed as of right, and the increase from a, single-family home, which was demolished, to a duplex, which is just a modest increase in density, is not, something that we have either the right or really should be prohibiting at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Ford?
I agree, and I adopt the comments of Commissioner Brandon.
Commissioner Francis?
I have one question, is this conforming to our regs with the setbacks
Yes,
on both sides?
yes.
I drove by it today, it looks pretty narrow, but it's deep. But you've got the 10 feet on each side of each part, both 30 and 50 are 10 feet away.
It is compliant with our setback standards, yes.
Okay. Very good.
And Commissioner Braun?
I'll be voting against this for a couple of reasons. I don't feel that we are fully informed till we hear from engineering or conservation. I also feel in these coastal reviews, we should be asking the resiliency task force if we have one. I don't know if we do or we don't, but we're supposed to be getting one. Anything in the coastal area. Also, can I get a clarification, from Ms. Harrigan? Are there 5 conditions of approval in your report, and are any of those changed by what the DEP said, or those are the final conditions of approval that you're recommending?
It just, adds the additional, removal of any planting below the 1-year title line in conjunction with those other conditions recommended.
That's in item number 1, that's in condition number 1, right?
Right,
So all 5 of those are what you're recommending be added on as conditions?
correct.
Okay, in your report. Thanks.
Any other member of the commission? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. All opposed? Motion passes 6-1. And that leads us to the public hearing, which that item has been continued, to the next hearing on the 28th. So with that, I will close this hearing. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.